every time. Seth lay sprawled on the bed, one arm tossed over his head. His breathing came deep and fitful, and the sheets lay in a tangle around his long, lean body. Moonlight muted out the color of his hair, but in the sun, its light brown would pick up a russet glow. Seeing him, studying him, I felt my heart swell in my chest. I'd never expected to feel this way about anyone again, not after centuries of feeling so empty. Bryce had meant nothing to me, but this man before me meant everything. I slid into bed beside him, and his arms instantly went around me. I think it was instinctual. The connection between us was so deep that even while unconscious, we couldn't stay away from each other. I pressed my cheek to Seth's chest, and his skin warmed mine as I fell asleep. The guilt from Bryce faded, and soon there was only Seth and my love for him. I slipped almost immediately into a dream, except, well, I wasn't actually in it, at least not in the active sense. I was watching myself, seeing the events unfold as though at a movie. Only, unlike a movie, I could feel every detail. The sights, the sounds, it was almost more vivid than real life. The other Georgina was in a kitchen, one I didn't recognize. It was bright and modern, far larger than anything I could imagine a non-cook like me needing. My dream self stood at the sink, arms elbow-deep in sudsy water that smelled like oranges. She was hand-washing dishes, which surprised my real self, but was doing a shoddy job, which did not surprise me. On the floor, an actual dishwasher lay in pieces, thus explaining the need for manual labor. From another room, the sounds of Sweet Home Alabama carried to my ears. My dream self hummed along as she washed, and in that surreal dream sort of way, I could feel her happiness. She was content, filled with a joy so utterly perfect, I could barely comprehend it. Even with Seth, I'd rarely ever felt so happy, and I was pretty damned happy with him. I couldn't imagine what could make my dream self feel this way, particularly while doing something as mundane as washing dishes. I woke up. To my surprise, it was full morning, bright and sunny. I'd had no sense of time passing. The dream had seemed to last only a minute, yet the nearby alarm clock claimed 6 hours had passed. The loss of the happiness my dream self had experienced made me ache. Weirder than that, I felt not right. It took me a moment to peg the problem. I was drained. The life energy I needed to survive, the energy I'd stolen from Bryce, was almost gone. In fact, I had less now than I'd had before going to bed with him. It made no sense. A burst of life like that should have lasted a couple weeks at least, yet I was nearly as wiped out as he'd been. I wasn't low enough to start losing my shape-shifting ability, but I'd need a new fix within a couple of days. "What's wrong?" Seth's sleepy voice came from beside me. I rolled over and found him propped on one elbow, watching me with a small, sweet smile. I didn't want to explain what had happened. Doing so would mean elaborating on what I'd done with Bryce, and while Seth theoretically knew what I did to survive, ignorance really was bliss. "Nothing," I lied. I was a good liar. He touched my cheek. "I missed you last night." "No, you didn't. You were busy with Katie and O'Neill." His smile turned wry, but even as it did, I could see his eyes start to take on the dreamy, inward look he got when he thought about the characters in his novels. I'd made kings and generals beg for my love in my long life, yet some days, even my charms couldn't compete with the people who lived in Seth's head. Fortunately, today wasn't one of those days, and his attention focused back on me. "Nah, they don't look as good in a nightgown. That's very Anne Sexton, by the way, like candy store cinnamon hearts." Only Seth would use a bipolar poet as a compliment. I glanced down and ran an absent-minded hand over the red silk. "This does look pretty good," I admitted. "I might look better in this than I do naked." He scoffed.